Welcome everyone to the webinar titled Question Answer Forum Export 101. Today's webinar is sponsored by SCAR-U. Scarborough University was founded in 2006 with a mission to provide necessary, relevant, and continuing education to Scarborough employees, clients, and professionals engaged in international and domestic trade and logistics. Today's webinar will go over the basics of exports. My name is Allison Schroer, and I am honored to be your host today. This is an interactive webinar, and we are here to answer your questions, so please submit questions. You can do so starting now. You will find the Q&A button at the top of your computer screen. Please note that you can easily adjust your windows. Please click on the top of the video portion to maximize or minimize this piece of the webinar. So while you're adjusting your screens and posting your questions, I'll take a minute to introduce you to Scarborough. Scarborough is a full-service logistics provider that has been operating since 1984. We are headquartered in the heart of America in Kansas City, Missouri, where faith, family, and hard work make for a great organization. We also have offices in Chicago, St. Louis, Des Moines, Laredo, Nuevo Laredo, Mexico, and Shanghai, China. We also have a sales presence in New York and Dallas. We are part of a global network of partners, which puts us in offices in every port in the world. We pride ourselves on local people and local presence, providing simply the best customer service. We truly partner with our clients and act as an extension to your company, making your job easier. Let me introduce you to my co-host, Chad Cluton.
Hello.
He is a certified export specialist with an extensive background in exports.
Great, thank you, Allison. Thank you guys for joining us today. And I figured we'd start off with just a 1,000-foot view of what the export process and kind of what an export is for those of you who may not even know or have not endeavored into that arena. An export is just any shipment that is sent from the United States or the origin country to anywhere else in the world. Could be as close as Canada, could be as far away as the other side of the globe. So the slide that we're looking at now is kind of in picture form, kind of a 8-step process in very simplified manner of what takes place in the export process. It starts at your loading facility or where the freight is originating at, maybe your warehouse or a separately located warehouse, and it transports via truck or courier or some mode of operation to the terminal. If it's a FCL shipment or full container load, it might actually get stuffed at the load facility and then transported off to the terminal to get loaded onto the vessel. If it's an LCL shipment, it might get transported by a courier or a trucking outfit that would then take it to a container freight station to be consolidated into a container, which is then loaded onto a vessel. Or airplane if it's an air shipment. As you can see that once it gets loaded on the vessel, it then travels and traverses the world via air or water to wherever the destination country is, and then the container then gets offloaded, or the cargo gets offloaded from the airplane and deconsolidated either via a terminal or brought by the container might be brought directly to the destination facility where it is then unloaded at the consignee's facility. So who's involved in exports? Who are the parties? Who gets involved? That's going to be the shipper, the consignee. Their names, they have a relationship of some sort that could be the buyer and seller as well, but they could be different. You also have a freight forwarder that's involved.
Like Scarborough International.
Like us, the best there is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the buyer and seller could also be the shipper and consignee, like I stated earlier, or they could be two other separate parties. And also you have two acronyms that follow that, the USPPI, which is the United States Principal Party of Interest, and the FPPI, or Foreign Principal Party of Interest. Those parties as well could be the shipper and consignee, depending on the buying terms and who's all incorporated in this process. Sometimes they could be other parties as well. And then you have the carrier. That's another party that gets involved because they're the ones who, whether it's rail or airline, for air transport, or a vessel for the ocean carrier, whoever owns and operates the vessels. And then you also have the trucker who gets the cargo from your facility to the terminal or the port. So of all those parties, who's responsible for what? And that relies on the Incoterms. It's kind of a word that some people may be scared of, some people may know a lot about, but there's a lot of information when it comes to that. So, Allison, you want to?
Yeah, we have this chart here. By the way, you'll get a follow-up email after this webinar is over, and you'll get a copy of this recording as well as the slides from today's presentation and this handy-dandy Incoterms chart, which is very popular around here. We've kind of put on here, we've circled what we think is the best terms to buy your freight on and the best terms to sell your freight on. And you can look at this chart here and decide based on, which Incoterm you're deciding to sell on, what you're going to be responsible for, whether you're delivering, to just the port or a named place, whether you have to pay for insurance or destination fees. This can answer all of your questions. And I know we all rely on this chart every day. It's a really great piece we have here. So we'll get you all a copy of it.
Yes. And so as you look at the chart, you may go, well, why does it matter? Why does it matter which Incoterm I choose? I just need to get it to this port. Why are all these other boxes on there? Well, all of those boxes and all the different Incoterms really play into the total landed cost. And that can vary quite. It can have a vast array of charges depending on which Incoterm you choose. It's not really a movable figure. I mean, to get shipment A from point A to point B, it's going to cost the same no matter how you move it, or I should say no matter who moves it, it costs the same. It's just a matter of who pays for what portion of that. And as you can see from the little chart on this slide here, the total cost of the goods is $10,000, and the inland charges and the ocean charges total with insurance about $11,200. That's about a $10,000, or I'm sorry, a 10% increase in the cost of the goods just to get it to the destination port. And that's what where you see cost, insurance, and freight, CIF terms, that would get it up to the destination country's port, but no further. After that, you have all the landed charges, like the import duties or the VAT, the merchant marine, terminal handling charges, even a compulsory union contribution, which sometimes you have they can be high, they can be low. It varies depending on port and country around the globe. So all that to say, that's another $3,000. In essence, you got it all the way across the globe to the destination country for less than half of the destination charges. So that can really advance the cost of the goods and how you sell it. You may be able to make money in your goods going up to the port, but once you factor in all the destination charges, it can make it not so profitable for your company. That's why it's so appropriate to select the correct Incoterms so that it doesn't bite the bottom line at the end. So how do I decide to send my shipment? How do I get it going in the right manner? Like we stated, there's so many carriers before this. There's truck. You can do, if it's just going to a neighboring country like Canada or Mexico, you can send it versus in a full truckload, or consolidated with other shipments going the same direction in a truck. That's an LTL shipment, or less than truckload. Or you can send it via ocean if it's a country that's not connected to us, and that's a much more economical way of shipping than air, but it's a lot slower way. There's no fast boats. They're all the same. Roughly, they all go the same speed. They make different sizes.
Right. And then you have the options of all water service versus maybe land bridge. So if you were shipping something from China to the U.S. East Coast, you could do all water service. It's going to take you a lot longer in the ocean, but it's going to usually cost you a little bit less than mini land bridge, which means it comes into Long Beach and then rails all the way across the country. But you have the options, you have the choices. So
yeah, that's true. And then obviously, if you need it there a lot quicker, a lot faster, you can choose air. And even there's different options in regard to air as well. You can either choose to go a commercial route, where it's probably a little less expensive because they're selling ticket prices to mitigate their cost of flying, or cargo, which is strictly just for cargo, and there's really no passengers flights. Or you can actually, if it's really big or really important and really needs to be secure on its own plane, you can even charter your own plane. They tend to be pretty costly, but they tend to be a little more secure, and you can dictate kind of the schedule as well. There's another option of railing as well. You might need to use that in conjunction with another type of, like usually ocean shipments as well. We'll need the rail to get that container or shipment to the port at the coast if it's a long distance. So how do I choose? Obviously there's costs involved, but how do I choose? How do I know which one's right for me? Well, that depends on numerous things. It can depend on obviously your size of your shipment, the cost of transporting it. You may have a budget you need to stay with under. You also might need to get it to the destination country by a certain date. You may have tests that need to happen at that destination country that you have people arriving for, so that freight needs to be there. Also, maybe your cargo has an expiration date. It needs to get there by a certain date, or your cargo is no longer good. You may need to expedite it in that case. Also, routing. You may need to route it away from certain climates. Maybe it needs to stay away from hot climate or stay away from cold climate, as well as maybe it needs to stay out of certain countries because you can't pass through them, or your goods are not allowed to be in that country. Then also, depending on your, like I said before, your packaging is your commodity perishable? What's inside that container? So those can all weigh into how you choose. So how do I know if my shipment's going to fit into a container or fit into the airplane? We kind of have another cheat sheet, if you will, that has all the container specifications of kind of the 3 most common containers, and what you can put in them and how big they are, and also how much weight you can put in them too, because sometimes you have really big shipments that don't weigh a lot, or you have really small shipments that weigh a lot. So this gives you kind of a handy guide to know whether I'm going to be able to maximize my shipment details. And Kim will also send you this in the email as well when she sends the follow-up of our recordings. So be looking for that to help you out in the export process. Now, once I have that figured out, now if I know I want to send it air, or if I want to send it ocean, and I know I want a 40-foot container, or if I have just an LCL shipment, how do I go about getting a quote? That's always kind of we're here for that, but how do I start that process? There's some information that we'll need in order to help you, or to get you the comprehensive amount of what that cost would be to ship that good.
Right.
Yeah. Some of those items would be on the transportation side, what Incoterm you decided to choose, where the freight is starting from, and where the freight is going to ultimately end up. Also, if there's a stipulation, if it's on a letter of credit, you might have an origin port that you need to sail it out of, or that you need to arrive at the destination. And also, you might want to tell us how you want it sent, whether it's via ocean or air. Another thing is also what's in the container. Tell us what the commodity is, whether it's hazardous or non-hazardous. We have to state those specifications to the carriers, because they have sometimes regulations on what they can carry and what they can't carry, especially when it comes to hazardous goods. And then if you also have the specified Schedule B number, you can also list that on your quote, because that will also, it not only helps us in the quoting process, but also helps us once we do the shipment paperwork as well, because that will be used when we file an AES. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Also, if you need insurance on your shipment, you'll need to provide to us the commercial value so that we know how much to insure it for, so that you have complete coverage. Now, other helpful dates, or other helpful information, I should say, would be a ready date, or a needed by date at the destination country, or any other special requirements like documentation or licenses, or even if you ship even if you have multiple shipments and your frequency is higher than just a single shipment, that can help us to ask the carriers if they can provide us a little better rate for you, because your volume is going to be higher to provide you a lower rate. Also, the weight and the dimensions of what you're putting in that container, or shipping in an LCL format. So some other things to keep in mind when you're requesting a quote or getting ready to ship, like I said before, whether my cargo is hazmat materials, or I should say hazardous materials, or non-hazardous materials. Maybe I am shipping to a country or to a consignee that needs the pallets and boxes marked in a particular manner. They need special labels or special documents. A lot of countries are requiring even the packaging, the wood packaging, whether it's the dunnage that's surrounding the material or the pallets that they go on, to be ISPM 15 certified. And that's a big rate, because what can happen is if your packaging and pallets are not that, they get seized.
Right. Or have to go through be turned around and shipped back, to be properly packaged or fumigated at destination. There's a lot of different scenarios, and that's something too that, if you need assistance with crating and packaging with the proper wood packaging, we can help with that too in our warehouse here in Kansas City. So
we have good crate builders, that's
yes,
for sure. So once I have all that information of what I need to get a quote, and I've received the quote, and I say, okay, this is what we want to do. How do we go forward? I need to make a booking. I need to start off by letting the carriers know I need to use them. So what are bookings? Well, once the quote is accepted, we book the shipment with that carrier that you wanted to send it on, and we schedule a pickup. We send our truckers in if you're near one of our offices, or if you're far away, we work with a network of truckers to get your goods. And then we deliver those goods to the appropriate either terminal or container freight station to get your freight consolidated in the right container. And a couple key things to remember when you're booking. If you know you have a shipment coming up, book as far in advance as you can. It does a couple things. It ensures vessel space. It makes sure that we can provide equipment and get the right parties involved so their schedules are free, as opposed to trying to do it last minute and you have conflicts and run into bumps in the road. And once the shipment is booked, we can always move it or roll it if your timeline changes. We can move the booking to a later date. That's called rolling it, or if it needs to be moved up, we can advance it to an earlier vessel or airplane or rail or truck. You can also, if everything falls through and you decide not to ship to your consignee, you can also cancel it, typically with no penalty if no work has been started. If we don't have the container picked up already, or if we have the freight moved out of your facility, there might be some charges to bring it back. But if it's not, there's typically no cost to cancel that. Mm-hmm. So when I get a booking confirmation from us, or I should say when you guys get a booking confirmation from us, what kind of information should I expect to see, and what should I be able to get? You'll find a lot of information on our booking confirmations. A lot of that would, depending on which routing you choose, or if you take an air shipment, you might have your air information, but you'll have the carrier name and the SCAT code listed. You'll have the date the documents are required to us so that we can file the appropriate paperwork with the carrier.
Very important.
Yes, because if we don't, then the shipments get rolled or delayed, and there can be fees, there can be penalties if we don't have that at the right time. There's also the VGM, that is typically with an ocean shipment, what date we need to submit the weight of that shipment for the VGM processing. You also have what vessel name or airplane airliner name, as well as the flight or the voyage number listed, so that you can list that or track that through different websites through us as well. You'll have the sailing date or the departure date, the arrival date, and at the destination. You also have the ports of where it's originating from or destined to. And you'll even find out where it's located, where it's going to, like as far as where we need to pick up. We can pick that'll be listed on there, so we can find the routing information on there as well. So we mentioned documentation, when it needs to be to us. What documents do I need in order to not get in trouble or not have any penalties or bookings rolled? Well, that depends on what kind of country you're going to. It depends on a lot of different things. Destination countries, they can require certain commercial documents and special purpose documents to be provided by you, the shipper, in order that the importer can get the customs release at the destination. And it's the seller's responsibility to inform you of what they need, but it's a lot of times the shipper's responsibility to provide those to the consignee in order so they can do that. So some of the general documents you may be familiar with is a commercial invoice, or a packing list, and a bill of lading, simple bill of lading. Some special ones that you may have run into or may not be familiar with: certificates of origin, inspection certificates, phytosanitary certificates if you have goods that need those. Or if you go to a country that needs fumigation, you'll need a certificate that shows it's been done that way. And if you have hazardous material goods, you'll need a MSDS, or material safety data sheet, that alerts everyone in the process of handling those goods what to do or who to contact if something were to go wrong, and how to clean up those goods if something were to go wrong as well.
Another note I could add on there too is if you need help with a certificate of origin or legalized documents, that's also another service that Scarborough International can provide. And definitely letter of credits. We have quite a bit of experience in working with LCs, so yeah, we definitely could be your go-to for that.
Yeah, we also have, in regards to our webinars, we have a letter of credit webinar too. So if you have questions on letter of credits, check out our webinar on that topic as well. Mm-hmm. So we talked about earlier, and the documents are needed to file the Shipper's Export Declaration, or SED, or AES. There's many different names. What is that? What does that entail, and what's the purpose of that? Well, kind of like the opposite when it comes to an import shipment, we need to declare to the Census Bureau any shipment or most shipments that leave the United States. And we do that with a shipper. It's had different names throughout the years, but it started with a Shipper's Export Declaration, also called or titled an AES, which is an Automated Export. What does that stand for? I'm totally drawing a blank here. AES, we just shortened up to, we never really, there's so many acronyms in the export industry. Also called an EEI, an electronic
automated export system.
Automated export system. EEI is electronic export information. So it's had many names throughout its process. It's tough to remember fully what they mean, so we go by the acronyms. When is it required? Well, any shipment that leaves our country that is over $2,500 and not going to Canada will need one of these. And that's with any one, if your shipment has any one Schedule B number that is over $2,500. You could have multiple Schedule B numbers, and if they don't, any one of them don't total over $2,500, then you don't need to file the SED. Why we don't need to send them to Canada, or why, when you have an export shipment going to Canada, why you don't need an SED? That's because Canada and America share their information very well. We don't have to worry that their information or our information is inflated or not accurate when it comes to exports or what goods are being exported. Now, when is an SED not required? Well, like I said, if it's going to Canada, or if a Schedule B is under $2,500, all of your Schedule B numbers are under $2,500 of value, you do not need the SED. Also, if there's some other smaller things too, like if you're exporting tools of trade, if you are going to another country to do some work and you're bringing tools with you, you don't need to file an AES or EEI on those shipments. There's a lot of other different small regulations that can help you if you don't know exactly yet with your commodity. The Title 15 Part 30 FTR, the Federal Trade, Foreign Trade Regulation, that has a wealth of knowledge in determining whether you need to or not. We read that and go through that. So if you tell us what commodity or what purpose your shipment is for, we can let you know whether there's one of those stipulations that you may or may not need to file your EEI. And also part of the SED, you need to locate and definitely secure your Schedule B number for your commodity. Some shippers may have the HTS number from importation, but that may be different than what that commodity is listed in the Schedule B regulations when it goes out of the country. So something to keep in mind. So we mentioned a little bit earlier, or when we saw on the export documentation list, there was something called the destination control statement, and that is something that plays into when we file the SED. If you have a commodity that needs a license, because it's a commodity that is regulated, or if it's going to a regulated country or a regulated consignee, you'll need to know more about this destination control statement. So what is it? I'll forward my slide here. The destination control statement is something that you as the exporter must incorporate as an integral part of the commercial invoice whenever there's items that are listed, that you're shipping, that are listed on the Commerce Control List, or CCL. I'll read the statement out here. These items are controlled by the U.S. government and authorized for export only to the country of ultimate destination for use by the ultimate consignee or end user herein identified. They may not be resold, transferred, or otherwise disposed of to any other country or to any other person other than the authorized ultimate consignee or end user, either in their original form or after being incorporated into other items without first obtaining approval from the U.S. government or is otherwise authorized by U.S. law and regulations. So basically that statement needs to be placed on all of your commercial invoices, whether they're digitally transmitted to the party or you actually mail them if they're originals. And doing so, you need to do your due diligence when you're exporting, because otherwise you could face, as the shipper could face, penalties and fines associated with non-compliance.
And even if your product isn't, requiring ECCN or on the commerce control list, it's not a bad idea to put that on your commercial invoice.
Just to have it as a bottom clause. That way it's always on there.
Yeah.
Keeps you guys out of trouble if it's on there. So, but obviously every shipper is different. So you can ask us independently, and we can help you determine whether that your product needs a license or not. So how do I know if I need a license? Kind of a short little, it's not by any means encompassing in all regards, but here's some questions to ask yourself to determine whether maybe my product needs a license. What am I exporting? Is my commodity licensable under the ITAR or the EAR? Not the EAR 99, but just the EAR. Those are a smaller list of just the goods that may need those licenses. Or where am I going? Can I ship to this destination country? There's a list of countries that have embargoes or restrictions that we're not allowed to go to. You can find those lists at export.gov. There's a good listing there, and they're good help. Who will receive my item? We have a list of parties that are considered the denied parties list. They've either broken laws or they've done stuff that's in the gray area. So they're on a list of parties that's not wise to ship to. And so we can test if you know that if you don't know your consignee, if you just met them out of a random workshop or seminar, and you're not quite sure whether they're a legit business or on the up and up, we can help you check our denied parties list so that you can ensure that you're not shipping to someone who's not on the up and up.
And we check it every time.
Every shipment,
every export, we check the denied parties list for all parties involved just to make sure we're good to go. Because
parties can get added or taken off at all times. Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure we didn't just miss one because we checked it last week and not this week. So what will your item be used for? A lot of times your commodity might not be listed in the ITAR for military regulations or whatever, but your product could be used, or the software within your product could be used in a not so good way by someone who's not sure, shouldn't be trusted. And you may think that your product is totally innocent, which it may be in and of itself, but someone can utilize your product in a different manner, which could make it need to have a license so they can track that better. So how do I, once we determine whether I need my license and I have all the documents and I filed the AES and I got it to the carriers and I got my shipment, how do I track it? How do I know where it's at? What do I just hope that it's made it there and I call my consignee and say, did you get it yet? Well, we have a broad range of ways to track and to ensure that your shipment is still moving and not getting tied up and not being held up in a certain way. Once it leaves your facility and goes on a truck or to the terminal, all the carriers we use and all the carriers that we partner with have tracking softwares that track milestones. They don't put GPS locators on your actual freight, but they do know, they notate and have barcodes that they can scan that once it gets to a terminal or once it gets to a port, they will scan those barcodes and record those container numbers to ensure that they can let us know that the container's there, they've notated it, it's there, they've touched it, and it's ready to move on. So we can then track through their software ways that to locate where your container's at. Also, once it's on the water, people go, well, how do I know that the vessels didn't sink or not on the way? We have a website that it's open to the public, but it's one of the tools we use. It's called marinetraffic.com, and you'll see kind of a screenshot on this slide where at this point when we screenshotted this, those were the amount of vessels, and once we zoomed in, there probably even more, but different types. There's tanker vessels, there's container ship vessels, and that are traveling with freight all over the globe. And so we're able to search by our vessel name and voyage number, and it'll show us exactly, usually within about an hour, of where that ship is located on the globe. So it's kind of and there's other features if you have, if your company chooses to do so, you can pay, and they have other features that allow you to have more information about that as well. So So in review, once my shipment has gone to the destination, I know I've tracked it and they've had a milestone to know that my shipment has made it to the destination. I can rest assured that it's there, and once everything's good. So, but in review, how do I know what to avoid, or is there anything else I need to know? We've kind of come up with a list of the top 10 common mistakes, just as a good reference guide to keep aware of, and to, as you've learned all this information, maybe you guys have already known this, or maybe this is all new to you, but you can look through these 10 things and go, okay, hopefully I'm not committing any of these. These are kind of the big ones. One, I need to select the proper Incoterm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to pay too much. I don't want to pay too little. I want to have the right amount of control over my freight with not having to pay too much. Selection, use of credit terms. Do I know the people that I'm selling to, and can I trust them to pay me, or do I need a letter of credit? Do I need to go through a bank or a foreign exchange institute to ensure that I get my money for the goods? I need to check out the export regulations compliance. Where am I sending these goods? Am I able to do so? Does my product meet their country's guidelines? Am I meeting the U.S. guidelines to get it out of the country? And that goes along with number 4, anti-boycott regulations. Am I going to a country that boycotts me or my product or my country from shipping to them? Obviously, just recently, Cuba, we've had some regulations or deregulations made. So that those are things that can either open up commerce or restrict it, depending on which side of the wall you're on. Failure to supply documents in a timely manner. Make sure I get my documents made up ahead of time if possible, submitted to my forwarder, and so they can then submit them to the carrier so that I don't risk losing or missing a shipment date.
And in turn, getting them to destination as
Yes,
well.
getting them to the proper parties, getting to your consignee, getting them to their forwarder or their customs broker to clear customs quickly.
Right.
So there's no fees for demurrage or detention. Then preparing the goods. Once I get all the documents ready, then I need to make sure my goods can actually make it on the boat or make it in the airplane and not get damaged because there'll be forklifts that will pick it up, and you need to ensure that there's some safety around your freight so that it doesn't get damaged from accidental people handling this goods. And what you're loading, maybe you have a specific cargo that needs certain lashing points so they can pick it up with a crane or whatnot. So then you also need to document your goods to reduce the shortage. Make sure you have a great packing list. Make sure you're taking great notes that you can put them into your documents so that when it gets to the next destination, there's no arguments over, oh, I'm missing 2 pieces, or oh, you didn't send all of it. Take pictures. A lot of times before it leaves your warehouse, make sure you're taking pictures and store them. It can save a lot of not always does the freight arrive in the same condition it left in, but with pictures we can determine where at what point that damage occurred, so the right parties have to reimburse and pay for that damage. And then any overseas problems. Sometimes I'm going to a destination country and it's all great, but a civil war breaks out, or there's problems at the port, a hurricane, natural disaster that could prevent me from unloading off the vessel, and my freight keeps going to another port, or maybe there's an earthquake at the destination and my consignee is out of business for the next 3 weeks, and what do I do with the freight in the meantime? So you have to pay for storage or wherever. So those costs can add up. So making sure you're kind of aware of what's going on at the destination. And then as well, we talked about the documentation again and again and again, but it's really important. Those are the places where accidents and mistakes happen. You get the wrong number inputted, or you accidentally type the wrong weight, and that can screw up at customs because the physical weight of the shipment is different than what's listed on the pack list or the commercial invoice, and that can really screw things up. So making sure you have 2 or 3 parties check over the documentation and make sure that it's everything's good and there's no mistakes. That's kind of that's an overview. It's by no means all encompassing. We could get way more technical, but it would not be helpful to anyone, I don't think. So
just doing the 101 version.
Yes. So now we're going to get into the questions. I'm sure you guys have questions.